Hello, it's me. I'm back. I'm Peter, and today I'm talking to you about cricket. There's an awful amount of cricket to cover since I was last on YouTube. I'm sorry I was gone. I'm back now. We've had the conclusion of T20 series, we've had changes in coaching staff, major squad reforms, women's cricket, and of course an IPL auction to throw in as well. I've probably forgotten bits that have gone on as well. Time to start getting through this as much as I can, and let's get on with the show. And I think the best place to start is with the changes in staff within the England camp. In a previous video, I suggested that one or more of Joe Root, Ashley Giles, Chris Silverwood would not be in their jobs come the start of the West Indies tour in March. Just call me Mystic Meg, or Mystic Pete, or don't, because that's lame, and it's also fairly obvious that the change was on the horizon. Ashley Giles, formerly the managing director, was the man who gave Chris Silverwood all the power of selection and of coaching. And he may have overseen some of England's greatest white ball achievements, let's not forget the World Cup in 2019, but the removal of that outside voice that was the national selector has proven crucial in some of the errors that have cost England during this 4-0 Ashes defeat. Silverwood, who was the head coach, has also lost his job, and he had the unfortunate role of trying to guide a test team, playing, let's not forget, more cricket than anyone else in the world through bubbles and a global pandemic. His intentions, which was player protection foremost, were good. But when England were barely in an Ashes series and barely in a single session, in a single game of that series, the man in charge at the top simply cannot stay. The same can be said for Graham Thorpe, the batting coach. Our batting failed more than anything else, so surely he had to go too, which has proven to be the case. Sir Andrew Strauss and Paul Collingwood have taken over from Giles and Silverwood respectively on a temporary basis. Obviously, I wish them the best, but England are keeping their cards close to their chest in terms of the full-time replacements. I'm sure that is a story with more to come in due time. Is Root lucky to still be captain? Well, yes and no. Strauss is leaving the role of captaincy up to the next person as head coach, and he is lucky because most of the selection and the on-field choices during this winter tour, and indeed before that, were ultimately Joe Root's choices. And very often, these were the wrong choices. Let's not forget the Brisbane game, the Adelaide toss, all of that stuff. Having said this, the choices for captain are limited, really, and Joe Root is perhaps the only option that there is out there. Stokes, Broad, well, that leads me on to my next topic. And of course, England's squad for the West Indies tour has been announced very recently. It appears we have taken the two things that worked well over the last year and completely ignored them. Root is Test Player of the Year, scoring runs for fun, and he was at 4? Nah, let's put him back at 3, where his average is worse. Broad and Anderson, they've continued to prove their fitness and wicket-taking skills and abilities. No, perhaps most controversially of all, let's drop them from the squad altogether. This smells a little bit of England once again looking too far into the future rather than focusing on winning the game in hand. Yes, at some point we will have the daunting and terrifying no Broad, no Anderson future. It will eventually happen. And we don't have Broad and Anderson for that much longer. Well, Anderson in particular. You kind of forget that Broad is, 5 years younger than him? They are England's best, and England should, like Stuart Broad has said himself, start thinking about winning the game that's going to happen tomorrow rather than a game that's going to happen next year. I love Stuart Broad's fieriness, by the way. His attitude of coming out and saying that he isn't happy, very vocal. It's what England need in the camp. They don't need that taken away. They need it put into the camp, that fiery spirit. Anyway, Rob Key said that if we had the World Test Championship final as our next game in Antigua, Would Broad and Anderson play? The answer is obvious. Of course they would. Meanwhile, I will admit that Root claimed in an interview that it was his choice to go back to number 3. And in all fairness, given the fragility of the current England batting order, number 3 has essentially been the same as batting at 4. And batting at 4 has essentially been the same as opening. But I can imagine that choice from Root. I can imagine it. He's looked into that squad and he's seen that basically no one else, possibly apart from Crawley, who's going to open anyway, no one else is an option for 3. Rather than mistakenly shoehorn Bairstow or Lawrence in, he's done the only thing that can be done. And they do say, if you can't rely on someone else to do it, just do it yourself. A note on the other members of the squad then. I think Pope, Chris Wokes, Craig Overton especially should be counting themselves as lucky. Pope had a miserable Ashes and I think has been saved from the fact that he's young and promising. Wokes didn't have that much better of a series and Overton wasn't even considered for a game. They should be doubly lucky considering that Broad and Anderson were the ones that were dropped from the tour. Very lucky to be in that Windies squad, I think. Although I am happy to see Ben Foakes get another chance with the gloves, and I hope that Root backs Parkinson as his spinning option because he hasn't ever backed Jack Leach. Mahmood is exciting and possibly the only bit of variation in our attack, apart from Mark Wood, and Matthew Fisher has been called up for a potential debut. I think Milan, out of the batting options that have been dropped, is possibly the most unlucky to lose his place, although it was probably obvious that Burns and Hamid would not be kept. I'm excited to see how Alex Lees go. He's been fantastic in the county championship recently, and I hope he's given a chance alongside Zach Crawley for a regular or consistent amount of games. And on that same line, I really hope that Bairstow, if he's selected to play, isn't messed around and put all around the order and given the gloves and the gloves taken away from him. He just needs to be given a place in that team and allowed time there. England, of course, have already been to the West Indies this year, and they lost the 5-match T20 series 3-2. From a neutral perspective, it was a fantastic series and was on a knife edge to the very end. The analysis of this series has been done by excellent cricket journalists on various podcasts, so go find them if you haven't already. But I'm going to put this into the analysis hat, as it were. England's death bowling economy, death bowling being the last 4 overs of the innings, in 2021 was the worst of any full member nation. Going at 10 and over compared to the best in New Zealand, who were just over 8 and over, is simply not good enough, and it's not going to win you World Cups, that's for sure. That 2-run difference and over accounts for about 8 runs overall, and in tight games like semi-finals and finals against top opposition like New Zealand, India, Pakistan, Australia, that can be costly. Mills and Jordan, they took some hefty blows in the Windies, and Morgan, though he backs those players, needs to be able to find a way to bring their mojo back, because death bowling troubles arguably cost England 2 of the 3 games that they lost, and they almost cost England that one, the second game that they were victorious in, and they only managed to win by a run, basically because the last few overs went for hundreds. It felt like hundreds anyway. I would say that England's women had more success, but, well, no. Australia's women once again won the Ashes after comfortably beating England in the one-day section of the multi-form series. Again, the analysis has been done out and has been out there for some time, but it's very apparent to me that the Australian squad is very, very strong at this moment in time. It's great to see that a test has been added to the South Africa's tour to England this summer. This has been spurred on by what was arguably, in my opinion, the game of the entire winter, which was the women's test in Canberra. After playing out a match that went the whole 4 days with every possible outcome on the cards, particularly on that last nervy day, it seemed odd that there wasn't another test scheduled for 2022 in the women's game. But that's until now. Hopefully the addition of one test to the South Africa tour will lead to the addition of the test in the India series which follows that, and hopefully more to come following it. It kind of amazed me that Catherine Brunt, who seems like a mainstay of English cricket, has only played 14 test matches for England in her illustrious career. So here's to more women's test cricket, fingers crossed. I'm coming towards the end of my cricketing bonanza lollapalooza catch up, so let's have a roundup of the other nations. Later today, South Africa will be kicking off their tour to New Zealand in the first test match of the series. South Africa will be buoyed by their one-day and test defeat of India at home, while New Zealand are coming into the series one Ross Taylor short, following his retirement at the end of the Bangladesh series. West Indies are following up their defeat of England with a whitewash, or should I say followed up their defeat of England with a whitewash one-day loss against India. They are due to start a T20 series in Kolkata also later on today. And new captain Rohit Sharma is facing the loss of Washington Sundar through injury and KL Rahul as well. Whilst West Indies are thankful for the return of their captain, Kieron Pollard. Australia and Sri Lanka are halfway through a 5-match T20 series. Australia have already won the series, being 3-0 up, and were comfortable in their most recent victory, with Sri Lanka though being no pushovers, as proven by the taking of the Aussies to a super over in the second match. And the fourth match of the series starts on Friday in Melbourne. And finally, in the other nation roundup, Bangladesh and Afghanistan are due to start a one-day series next week. The Afghan build-up has been scuppered by several positive COVID tests in the camp that has left the entire camp entering isolation. And Bangladesh have called up 4 uncapped players for the one-day squad, including Ebadot Hussain, Nasim Ahmed, Yasir Ali and Mamadul Hassan Joy. The last thing to discuss for today in this podcast, of course, is the IPL auction that took place earlier this week, starting with Liam Livingstone being the most expensive overseas buy, going for $1.52 million to Punjab Kings. Crikey O'Reilly, I wish I could go for that much money playing cricket for wicket, but that's not going to happen. Livingstone has shown in this last year that his prowess is not just with the bat, but with the ball too. He holds the record for the fastest English T20 century, although arguably in the World Cup last year it was his bowling that was the most effective aspect of his game. He's also a fantastic all-round fielder. I was also amazed to see Jofra Archer go for over $1 million despite not actually being able to play a part in any of this year's tournament. Zahir Khan, Mumbai Indians director of cricket, promised that the potential of Bumrah and Archer bowling together next year is going to be worth the wait. And yeah, okay, I'm sold on that. I was pleased to see Mark Wood and Tymal Mills get a place, as well as current non-internationals Benny Howe and Alex Hales. Hales is the interesting one there, considering his continued pause from being part of the England camp. Morgan, whose lack of trust in Hales is basically the centre of this current pause, has missed out in this year's draw. He was Kolkata Knight Rider captain last year. He led them to the knockouts, but it's his lack of form with the bat that has effectively and realistically kept him out of the auction this year, or at least left him unselected. Which team do you think has Alex Hales gone to? Of course, he's gone to the Kolkata Knight Riders. Sometimes cricket just gives those weird twists and irony, hey? Malan, Rashid, Topley, Evans, they missed out in the draw, whilst Billings, Jordan and David Willey were snapped up late in the day. Bairstow and Roy changed franchises for big money, whilst Moeen Ali and Joss Butler were kept on retainer by their former teams. Really excited about the IPL this year, and hopefully it can return to India with those big crowds carrying the teams through the games. That will be all from me today. Thank you for sticking around with this extended video, and thank you for sticking around with this channel. I know I've been away for quite a while and I am sorry. I managed to get the dreaded COVID a couple of weeks back, and I'll be honest with you, it completely knocked me and I wasn't ready to do a video. But I'm fine now, you don't have to worry about me. Hopefully as well, I'll be back to putting out regular content in the next few weeks. Obviously centred around the West Indies and England tour. Please like, subscribe, comment and share this podcast. And if you're on Spotify, head over to my YouTube channel and vice versa if you're on YouTube. Until next time, sports fans, bye!